Is it just me, or does Wonka seem a few quarters short of a buck?
I'm sorry, I don't speak American.
You know what I love about remakes? You know what to expect. Sometimes you get shit that completely messes up the source material, sometimes you get a direct imitation, and occasionally you get a movie that tells you it's a direct imitation. I guess the lesson here is that remakes are mostly a bad idea, but what about good remakes? Well, certain things do come to mind, like The Fly, and most notably Scarface, which is apparently getting remade again because why not? But I think what these good remakes have in common is that nobody gave a shit about the original. I'm not saying they were bad, but it seems like for a remake to be liked, that has to be part of the equation. Well, you know, mostly. Why do I say this? Well, because I've seen what happens when it isn't. Yeah, I'm talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton directed remake starring Johnny Depp. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I don't get it. To me, this is, and I know it's gonna drive people insane, a prime example of a good remake.
You son of a bitch!
You're a fucking idiot.
Motherfucker! I'll bust your ass! I have had it with this motherfucking...
I get it, it's not like the original, it looks different, the characters act different, and stuff is shown that was supposedly best not shown. But that's the equivalent of saying that if something is good, you can't remake it. It's impossible. I don't believe that's true. I'm not saying it's better, but it did do a lot of things the original didn't, and in many ways it is an improvement. Obviously, some things can't be redone, and it's by no means perfect. But if you're gonna remake a classic movie that people do like, this is a good example of how to do that. I don't expect anybody to agree, but maybe, possibly somebody out there has an open mind. So, time has come to find out as we analyze Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and see if what I'm doing is not suicidal. So oddly enough, I think the opening credits are pretty effective in showing off the movie's tone. The music's composed by Danny Elfman, and while it may not have the nostalgia of the original, it does give you a good idea of how this film's gonna be. And then again, it is a Tim Burton movie, so maybe that's already obvious, but still, it's pretty impressive.
This is a story of an ordinary little boy named Charlie Bucket.
Oh yeah, we have a narrator this time. That should be insightful.
He was not faster or stronger or more clever than other children.
Maybe too insightful. You could have just stuck with him being poor. I mean, have you seen his house? It's the only house like that in the fucking city. There is literally a hole in the roof. And it's winter. Really is a fucked up narration. We see that Charlie is a big fan of Willy Wonka as he's constructed a replica of the factory.
I saw Willy Wonka with my own 2 eyes. I used to work for him, you know.
Hold off. Your grandson's been constructing this thing for some time now, and as we'll soon see, he's quite fond of chocolate, but you never felt the need to tell him this? The fuck? The movie does something a bit different and shows us the stuff that Wonka makes and how the factory came to be. And apparently this is something that people don't like. I guess the original movie's method of leaving this to the imagination was just perfect, and not to be messed with. It may have something to do with money, and the fact that talking is, you know, cheaper. And if that's the case, it's a good thing, because if they had the money back then, the whole movie would have been fucked. I mean, could you imagine showing us stuff? What an atrocity.
So you get nothing! You lose!
There is a bit that I like about a prince requesting that Wonka build him a palace made entirely out of chocolate and thinking it'd be okay to live in it.
Yeah, but it won't last long. You better start eating right now.
Oh, nonsense.
Did somebody say diabetes? But it's the remake, so this scene is in fact stupid. So spies get sent in to steal the recipes, not exactly discreet there, resulting in him closing down forever. Well, not forever, he does eventually reopen, but it's not doing those who got laid off any good.
Did you get your job back?
No. No one did.
Because if you did, you wouldn't be dying of hypothermia tonight. Then again, it might not be a good idea to eat stuff if you don't know who's making it, but what do I know? Did they think it was a real rib? But coincidentally, that exact night, the message is sent out, revealing the 5 golden tickets in the candy bars, and the whole special prize deal. You probably know the drill by now. And again, I love how it emphasizes the insanity this causes. I know the first movie did that too, but not to this extent. You could say it's unrealistic, but come on, you really think people wouldn't do this? But it's the remake, so I guess it's unrealistic. And offensive.
So you get nothing. You lose.
Unfortunately, since he only gets 1 candy bar a year for his birthday, he has little chance of winning. And the first ticket is found by the extremely fat kid, Augustus.
Told you it'd be a poker. What a repulsive boy.
Repulsive? Well, maybe, but compared to the other kids, he's a fucking saint. Kind of like Veruca, the spoiled kid, whose dad shuts down his entire nut business just to find one. Okay, so I guess she has kids at home, but what if a adult finds one that doesn't have any kids? Then what? Charlie fails to find the ticket, obviously, it's only been 20 minutes. And the next ones are found by Violet with the gum obsession. Shit, that's new. And Mike, who may be the most interesting of all the kids. He's upgraded to a video game obsession, is intelligent enough to calculate which bar would have the ticket, and most notably, is a lot meaner.
And how did it taste?
I don't know. I hate chocolate.
Well, it's a good thing you're going to a chocolate factory, you ungrateful little butt.
In fact, all the kids are a lot more interesting in this movie. Doesn't get mentioned too much, but in the original, they're kind of just cliches. Okay, they're cliches in this too, but at least they're kind of developed.
So you get nothing. You lose.
His dad then gets laid off because apparently chocolate sales have led to more cavities. You're supposed to brush your teeth even if you don't have cavities, but you know how this goes.
The factory had decided to modernize, eliminating Mr. Bucket's job.
So his grandpa has the bright idea to throw money away.
And buy the first Wonka candy bar, you see.
I'm not trying to be negative, but realistically, it probably wouldn't even be in that town. Okay, point to the original, as it didn't just cut away like that. I didn't change that. And it would seem that the last ticket has been found, and not televised, so I guess that's that. That is until he finds money on the street, opts to spend it even though he thinks there's no ticket, finds out there is a ticket as the last one was fake, right as he happens to open the bar to find the ticket. Okay, so on one hand, I do appreciate how they get to the factory a lot faster, as in the original it was quite lengthy, especially for a movie kids are gonna watch. But on the other hand, it does feel a bit rushed. They could have just not included the fake ticket element in the remake, as you find out it's fake anyway a minute later, and it would have flowed a lot better. Another side note is that the Slugworks character is for the most part absent, aside from a brief scene at the beginning. He wasn't exactly needed, but it's kind of odd they'd cut that. Then again, it's probably catastrophic. So he takes the ticket home, lets his parents celebrate, and then says he's not going.
The woman offered me $500 for the ticket. We need the money more than we need the chocolate.
So now you care about money?
There's plenty of money out there. They print more every day. There's only 5 of them in the whole world. Only a dummy would give this up for something as common as money.
That makes absolutely no fucking sense. But he agrees to go nonetheless, and as you can tell by this, I'm quite fond of the way Wonka was introduced in the original. The remake obviously can't imitate that, but I'm sure it has something equally as good.
Willy Wonka, Willy Wonka, the amazing chocolatier. Willy Wonka, everybody give a cheer. He's not as clever and so smart, he barely can restrain it. With so much generosity, there's no way to contain it.
So you get nothing. You lose.
And I guess we need to talk about Johnny Depp's performance. It's hit or miss.
Good morning, Starshine. The Earth says hello.
Okay, I'll admit it's not his finest work, but it's not that bad. Honestly, I think the biggest issue is not so much his personality, but the fact that most of what he says doesn't really make any sense.
Don't you want to know our names?
Can't imagine how it would matter. Chewing gum is really gross. Chewing gum I hate the most. See? Exactly the same. Because I distinctly remember putting a hat on top of my head. Look at your short little arms. You could never reach. It's in the fridge, Daddy-O. Are you hep to the jive? Can you dig what I'm laying down? I knew that you could. Slide me some skin. So, brother? Mumbler! Seriously. I cannot understand a single word you're saying.
I'll admit that Gene Wilder was probably better, but there are a lot of positives here too. And as you'll soon see, there's a lot more to this character than just this. Obviously, most people aren't gonna look past this intro, but maybe with a proper analysis, I can convince you that you may have missed something.
I always thought a verruca was a type of wart you got on the bottom of your foot.
Well, depending on your taste, I guess.
And the rest of you must be there.
Parents.
Yeah. Moms and dads.
And there it is, something new, something different that may lead to some interesting development later on. I'd like to see how the reviews get past this. It's a fucking remake. It's supposed to be a bit different. I guess if the original is good, then any kind of development is bad. Even if it doesn't affect that much.
So you get nothing. You lose.
So it's off to the candy room, that is a lot more Tim Burton-esque, and you can't deny that this scene is vastly superior. While the first movie was essentially just them eating candy, this version shows off a lot of interesting character traits in a very brief amount of time. A good example being this.
Son. Please.
Dad, he said enjoy.
But if you're pissed off about that improvement, you're really gonna hate this one.
Daddy, look over there. What is it? It's a little person.
Yes, the Oompa Loompas. Why is this gonna upset people? Because they show the backstory.
But the food they longed for the most was the coca bean. An Oompa Loompa was lucky if he found 3 or 4 coca beans a year. But oh, how they craved them.
Damn it! It's ruined! I mean, yeah, the high budget does provide for a pretty good-looking scene, but the way I used to envision this when I was younger, the magic of them talking about it, it's just gone.
So you get nothing. You lose.
So they came to work there in exchange for the cocoa beans, explaining how the factory is run, if anybody cares, and the fat kid falls in the river. And I gotta admit, Wonka's reaction is kind of odd. The pipe then gets clogged, and I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but the remake isn't a musical. While the original had multiple songs throughout, even before the factory, the remake can by no means be called a musical. It only includes songs in situations like this with the kids doing something stupid, and that's probably a good thing, for two reasons. First off, while the songs in the original were good, I don't really see much success redoing that. And most notably, the 4 songs they did include are pretty damn impressive.
Augustus Gloop, the great bakery nincompoop.
I'm sure most people prefer the original, even though it's just the same song repeated 4 times, while the remake, again, has the nerve to do something different. And in terms of music alone, I definitely prefer this.
Although, of course, we must admit, he will be altered quite a bit. Slowly wheels go round and round, and cogs begin to grind and pound.
But again, it's new. It's not the same thing, and in this case, it's not the same thing repeated 4 times. No wonder this failed.
So you get nothing! You lose!
So the rest head off to the boat, and we have something real offensive.
In fact, Willy Wonka hadn't thought about his childhood for years.
Another cursed flashback, but it's not just a flashback, it's a flashback of something that wasn't in the first movie. I'm talking about backstory, character development, events that actually might make you sad. There is no place for that shit in this movie. Who the fuck does Tim Burton think he is? It turns out his dad, played by Christopher Lee, is a famous dentist who throws away his candy on Halloween. Okay, it's not that sad, but to let him go trick-or-treating and then throw it away? That's fucking cruelty. Not to mention the braces. He really is an asshole. But there is one thing about the original that, let's face it, is never gonna be beat.
And they're certainly not showing any signs that they are slowing!
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this scene. I still don't know quite what it's supposed to be, but you can't deny the effect it's had. Also, this movie got a G rating. A G rating! It just goes to show that PG meant something back then. There's no telling where we're going. Is the like button down below? Yes! And the subscribe button is a way of showing there's any chance you're enjoying. That being said, I'm actually glad they didn't try and redo that. The scene we got is nothing special, but it fits in with the movie's tone nicely. But probably not nice enough.
So you get nothing! You lose!
However, I'm not quite sure about this bit.
Whipped cream.
Precisely. Whipped cream isn't whipped cream at all unless it's been whipped with whips. Everybody knows that.
Okay, I'm not gonna deny the fact that the way we make fast food is inhumane, but that's literally pointless. They go to the inventing room, in which the gobstopper is still a thing, even though it's irrelevant in this, and Violet consumes the one-course meal gum despite it being defective.
Violet, you're turning violet.
I've tried it on like 20 Oompa Loompas, and each one ended up as a blueberry. It's just weird.
Well, that's also inhumane, but time for a new song.
Listen close, listen hard. Little Violet Beauregard, this little girl, she sees the road. Chewing, 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 chewing.
This one's a 60s disco, opposed to the last one being a 50s mamba. And yeah, the decade thing is obviously going to be a theme. A common complaint about these is that they're not long enough, but in my opinion, if they were any longer, they might overstay their welcome. To me, it seems like a pointless complaint. They send her off to be juiced, and they head to the next room, which is the only room to be significantly changed, being nut-themed in this version.
Well, you see, Mr. Wonka, I myself am in the nut business. Are you using the Havermax 4000 to do your sorting?
No. You're really weird.
And I know what you're gonna say. Why go from eggs to nuts? It makes no sense. Well, because it has a more unique look to it, and who gives a shit? Obviously, Veruca wants one of the trained squirrels, but Wonka says they're not for sale.
I'm sorry, darling. Mr. Wonka's being unreasonable.
Okay, you can't deny that wasn't funny. So, like the original, she tries to take one, not going on an all-out rampage this time. And oddly enough, this is actually one of the movie's best scenes when you consider all the clever bits in it.
Don't touch that squirrel's nuts. It'll make him crazy. The incinerator. But don't worry, we only light it on Tuesdays.
Today is Tuesday.
Well, there's always the chance they decided not to light it today.
Then again, there is something disturbing about this too. Especially because in this version, he tells him about the incinerator before she's thrown in. So they essentially think she's going to her death. Still, I do question why they didn't just climb down there and stop it. They had plenty of time to do this. So the next song is a hippie 70s track, and this is my favorite.
Veruca Salt, the little brute, has just gone down the garbage chute, and she will meet as she descends a rather different set of friends.
Not only is it a fun listen, but the lyrics are surprisingly funny. It may have something to do with the fact that he might be finding out his daughter is dead, and despite that, they still include the lines about the parents causing it.
Who went and spoiled her, who indeed, who pandered to her every need.
Yeah, the original did that too, but in this case, I think this version is far superior. So again, the dad falls in, but it turns out the furnace is broken, so they're fine. They head to the elevator, which is not renamed in this version. It's just an elevator, but it has the same properties. The movie again dares to do something new, showing us some new areas not in the original.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fudge Mountain.
But I don't think that's going to make up for the fact that 2 other scenes weren't included. Obviously, the soda scene wasn't needed, as that whole plotline was cut, but I'm sure it's still on the list of complaints.
So you get nothing! You lose!
During this montage of scenes that nobody likes, we get the continuation of the flashback that nobody likes. We see Wonka leaving home, as his dad obviously doesn't approve of his dreams, and he tells him he won't be there when he comes back. Okay, if you can get past the comedy of his house literally being gone, it's pretty fucking sad. Unfortunately, despite Christopher Lee having the highest death rate of any actor, Sean Bean has nothing on him, he's probably not gonna die in this. So they go to the TV room, and we see that Wonka has invented teleportation.
So imagine, you're sitting at home watching television, and suddenly a commercial will flash onto the screen, and a voice will say, Wonka's chocolates are the best in the world. And you simply reach out and take it.
Did somebody say bankruptcy? But Mike is not amused by the fact that he's wasting this on chocolate, and what happens next is probably the common viewer's favorite scene.
You think he's a genius, but he's an idiot. But I'm not.
In this case, I kind of gotta agree.
Shocking.
He takes out the Oompa Loompas and has himself teleported, leading into what is my least favorite song.
The most important thing that we've ever learned. The most important thing we've learned as far as children are concerned. Never look near the television set.
Naturally, an 80s rock tune is next, and like the others, it has a lot of clever bits to it, and is again just real fun. I say it's my least favorite from a song perspective. It seems like the visuals got most of the attention this time, with the rock bands and movie references, but still, it's definitely not bad.
And what exactly do you propose to do about it?
Let's go put him in the taffy puller.
Taffy puller?
Hey, that was my idea.
Yeah, I thought I'd show that, opposed to explaining it. It just goes to show that this movie has a lot of funny lines in it. But again, this means Charlie is the only kid left.
What happened to the others? Oh, my dear boy, that means you've won!
So Charlie wins by default, and obviously we're not going to get an amazing scene when Willy Wonka goes insane.
So you get nothing! You lose!
But like the famous boat scene, I think that's a good thing. I mean, you'd have to be a real fucking shameless studio to take an actor that's nothing like the original and attempt to redo any classic scene. And who could be that shameless? They take the elevator out, and I'll admit, I really don't like how you see what happened to the kids. I always assumed they were not dead, but the idea of not knowing completely was kind of brilliant. So I guess on account of a completely unnecessary, non-beneficial change...
What the fuck happened to you, man? Your ass used to be beautiful.
But with that, back to the good stuff. He takes him back home. To this day I don't know why he goes through their stuff, and he tells Charlie that he's giving him the factory.
I mean, it's alright if my family come too.
Oh, my dear boy, of course they can't.
I'll admit, I did not see that coming. Clearly, he doesn't like family, for obvious reasons, and I think the idea of giving this character some depth, no pun intended, and continuing the plot was kind of genius. Granted, his beef should be with marriage, not family. But for some reason, not doing the exact same thing as the original is unacceptable.
So you get nothing!
Would you shut the hell up? This is a good idea. This is how you remake a movie that was already good to begin with. It doesn't happen too often, but it is possible. And this is how you do that. Minor changes, nothing too big, keep the original plot intact, but improve on things that have room to be improved on.
And for once,
the analyst
knew exactly what she was talking about.
So he declines the offer, obviously, which is in some ways kind of sad, and as it would, things automatically get a lot better. Wonka's feeling depressed though, and goes to see Charlie.
What do you have against my family?
It's not just your family, it's the whole idea of...
Well, you've invented teleportation, just invent the time machine and come here. You fit right in. So they go to see his dad, who really took the not being there thing to heart. And I do like the idea of him pretending to be a patient, and his dad finding out it's him because of his bad teeth. Doesn't make any sense, as he wouldn't have had bad teeth when he was a kid, but it's still a nice idea. The two then make up, and they all move into the factory, as cliche as it is, one big family.
In the end, Charlie Bucket won a chocolate factory. But Willy Wonka got something even better.
And they brought the house with them. I guess that was important too. But that was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the remake. And I think the big question is, do I actually prefer this? Maybe. As I've said throughout the video, I don't understand why this movie is so disliked. It does have flaws, most notably for me, Johnny Depp does get a bit too stupid at times. And while this isn't a flaw, some iconic scenes can't be redone, and they shouldn't be. But the original is always gonna have that. Gene Wilder is definitely the better actor for this, but just because somebody's not as good doesn't mean he has to be bad. Johnny Depp may not be as entertaining, but he makes up for it by being more interesting. My favorite thing about this movie is the inclusion of his backstory and the way it continues past the original. It's not the greatest thing ever, but for a Tim Burton movie about a chocolate factory, it's good enough, and it leads to some genuinely unexpected moments. I'm not saying Depp's portrayal is better, I'm just saying it does improve on some things. Charlie and his family are about the same in both versions, nothing monumental there, but the side characters are maybe the most notable difference as they're a lot more developed and way easier to dislike. Again, I really hate how you see them exit, but you can't deny the improvement here. And the same can be said for the songs, which in my opinion are all quite good, while the background music itself really fits the movie's tone way beyond the opening credits. Not to say the original isn't classic, but I really like the way they did this. I think in the end it comes down to, are you willing to accept something slightly different? And I think it's quite obvious most people aren't. The movie may have a few things I don't like, but for Gene Wilder to call it an insult, I just don't see that. Then again, Roald Dahl hated his version, so that's something. But I think the lesson here is that remaking movies is a bad idea, unless the original is disliked or just not cared about. Lesson that apparently has not been learned. Because as far as classic movies go, remaking them is, for the most part, not possible. Based on ratings and public opinion, but I'm the analyst, and remember kids, teleportation would in fact be a miracle. Using it to give away free products would be catastrophic. So, you made it to the end, an impressive feat indeed. Since you managed that, consider checking out the gaming channel, in which I cover a variety of gaming topics, like in-depth gameplay, and analysis videos like this one. If you want to see that, then press the link in the description. It's that simple.